Nak gini pun boleh juga. Ya, aku lipat kaki belah sini ke aku lipat belah kaki belah sini bawah lawa?
Okay, Alhamdulillah. Today we have Asy'ari. So in the discussion of estate planning on the Islamic perspective and rules and regulation and whatnot. So why do we need to have an estate plan when we have faraid?
Good question. So there is a difference between estate plan and faraid. A lot of Muslims in Singapore, especially when they think about death, the first thing they think about is, when I pass on, my assets will just be distributed according to faraid. So why bother? That's the question, right? But we need to understand that between death and faraid, there are multiple steps in between that a lot of Muslims just totally forgot about it. So number one is, firstly, you have to repay off your loans. So whatever loans, debts that you have to humans or to organizations, you have to pay them back first. And then secondly, you have loans to Allah. So let's say you haven't paid zakat for that year, or you miss your fast because whether you were sick or just because during your youth you were not the best of Muslims, right? So you have to pay off your loans to humans, and you have to pay off your loans to Allah. Secondly, we have deductions via just estate planning instruments. So for example, for your property, joint tenancy property in Singapore, when one of the spouse passes away, his rights of survivorship, and therefore the other spouse will inherit in full. So certain assets will not go down to faraid. So an estate plan is key to make sure that you know how much you are actually leaving behind to your ahli waris. So this is something that I personally experience with my clients, where his net worth is about $1 million. But then once we have calculated and we have looked down at his what plan that he has, and all the deductions that were supposed to be made, he actually netted off negative. So he's leaving behind loans to his ahli waris instead of assets. And therefore, for you to find out more about the health of your estate, you need an estate plan.
So Asy'ari, what are the key considerations in estate planning for a Muslim?
Good question. So when we talk about key considerations for an estate plan per se, not for Muslims, for an estate plan, we ask the three questions: the who, the how, and the what. So the who will be, who are your ahli waris, who will be the one inheriting from you, who will be your executor, the one who will handle your assets, who will be your guardian for any minor children. The what will be, what kind of assets will you be leaving behind. There are mainly two kinds of assets: joint assets and single-owned assets. So for joint assets, the joint owner going to inherit in full or no? For single assets, do you have any sort of nominations? The how will be then, how would you determine for your single-owned assets how you want to distribute them? Whether via nominations or via creating a trust. But as the question mentioned, for a Muslim, so we have to understand that in Islam, faraid is the law of Allah. It's not man-made. It's not even by our Prophet Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It's the word of Allah. And we have to understand that there is hikmah, there is a reason behind why, for example, males will inherit more than females. Why certain people will inherit, why certain people will not inherit. And for a Muslim, we have to make the conscious decision and conscious effort to make sure that we are not preventing people from inheriting. We have cases where a parent, oh, I don't like a particular son of mine. He's a drug addict. He always goes in and out of jail, and therefore I want to prevent him from inheriting from me. This is something that we have to consciously make sure that we don't do. Because at the end of the day, when we pass on, the wealth doesn't belong to us. The wealth goes back to Allah, and only Allah can dictate where this wealth will go to.
Very interesting. So, but in that sense, right, what can happen if I don't have an estate plan? That means I don't plan at all.
One of the things that you do in an estate plan is to write a will. And one of the things that you do in a will is to write the executor, to name your executor, who is the one who is going to be distributing your estate. So when you don't have an estate plan, you don't have a will. And if, let's say, for example, you have 10 different beneficiaries inheriting from you, then without a will, all 10 need to come together to agree on who to become the administrator, and it will lengthen the process, because with a will, you can easily distribute the assets within 6 months to a year. Without a will, we have seen cases up to 5 years, up to 17 years even. So, sure, don't have an estate plan, because at the end of the day, when you pass on, you're not responsible for your wealth anymore, and therefore just allow your ahli waris to fight over your wealth. Because why not, right? Of course not. We don't want, when we pass on, our ahli waris will be fighting over the wealth, when we could have done something to make sure that, to minimize and reduce all this. Rasulullah SAW says, terkejut aku. Rasulullah SAW says, help mend good relations. So if we can help by creating an estate plan to mend and to create good relations between our ahli waris, even better.
Very interesting. Okay, so can I more or less sums up what you just said? Whether or not a person would think that estate plan is important or not, is better to actually consider even plan something.
Exactly.
Look into the estate, get an expert like yourself to see whether truly, really do you need to actually do an estate plan or not. Sometimes we find that it's simple, straightforward, but for all we care, it's not, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Absolutely.
Okay, what were you doing before this?
Before joining Aman Amanah, I was a student at NTU studying banking and finance. I was studying a lot about the conventional finance side of the world without being exposed to the Islamic side of it.
So that was what you were doing as you were a student, is it?
Yes.
I see. So, from there, what you learned, what you were studying and graduated, why the switch to what you do now?
Let me bring you back to 2017, where it was, I think, summer break, and the Muslim Society invited a certain speaker to my school, conducting on Islamic finance. So back then, my aim was to enter the finance world and to gain as much money as possible, be rich as quick as possible, because a richer Muslim can benefit the community better. So that was my aim. But in that summer 2017, a certain person called Zaid Masagos came to my school and exposed me to the wonderful world of Islamic finance, where I realized that the world of finance is just riddled with haramness from top to bottom. So I attended 3 sessions of 2 hours each, and I hated you from the moment I saw you. Until the end of the 3rd session, when I realized that at the end of the day, who am I going to lie to? And am I going to remain in blissful ignorance and tell myself that, you know what, tak apalah, Allah is most forgiving. So I obviously can't do that. And that is how I made the conscious decision to, if I want to stay in the finance world, I have to stay in the Islamic sector.
So then comes to the I mean,
Dia
always
punya pasal.
dia punya pasal. Okay. So I always wanted to ask. I mean, there are people who are considering to join us, or may not to even consider, possibly because they hate me. So I just trying to be now talking to somebody who is upfront, honest, to say regardless whether you are hating me or not, you chose the path. So then why do you choose Aman Amanah Advisory Group despite hating this buta?
Honestly, you were my last choice.
Okay.
Because I knew you from 2017 in NTU. So while I was job hunting in 2018, I told myself, let me look at all of the options available on the market before I go to you. That was my decision. Because as much as you gave me really good knowledge and information, I still didn't really like you lah.
It's okay.
But and we have competitors out there that do offer Islamic financial advisory, Islamic wealth advisory. I think when I was applying, including Aman Amanah, there were 3 other prominent ones. And I did talk to all 3. And I found something in Aman Amanah and Financial Alliance, something that I didn't find in the rest, which is in Financial Alliance and Aman Amanah, we have a department focusing on Islamic finance, a department on a corporate level that is there to assist the Muslim advisors or the advisors in Islamic Wealth Advisory. That was not present in any of the other three companies. And that was, to me, the most important factor, because I'm not an ustad. I don't have any qualifications to determine what product is halal, what product is not halal.
Yes.
I went for an interview with a company, and they say that, the best that we can do is to support you via the technicalities of sales, but the Islamic portion you have to figure out yourself. And I'm not there. If I have a PhD in Islamic finance, sure, I don't. So I have to, and Financial Alliance have internal and external Sharia advisors who are well qualified to assist advisors like me to filter through the Sharia compliancy of certain products.
Yes.
And that is when I ultimately decided that Aman Amanah is where I want to be.
Wonderful. So as we speak now, is your how many years?
This is my, good question. This is my 5th year in Aman Amanah.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much, Asy'ari.
Thank you very much.